Hey, Islanders, and welcome to episode 77 of the Camano Voice. Today I speak with the founder of the Camano Island Health System. Please welcome Dr. Bryan Cooper. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. Hey, before we get into the episode, I did want to say a quick thing. We've got this episode, which is episode 77, and then I've got one that I'll be releasing on January, the first Tuesday in January, which is going to be John Ebner, who is a local Camano Island artist, and he's also the featured artist of the Loft up in Camano Commons Marketplace. So every month at the Marketplace, we have a featured artist. They're going to be on a special area upstairs, and anyway, so we've got those two, this podcast and next week's podcast that'll all be coming out. But then I'm going to go under the radar, and I will be offline for a couple weeks after that. December's a crazy time for me and my family. Just with the shop and everything, we get really busy. So just taking a couple weeks to hang out with the family and lay low. So I will be back on the 26th, though I haven't stopped podcasting, and I got more coming out. So, but I just wanted you guys to be aware of what's going on. That's why there won't be new podcasts during that time period. But I will see you as soon as I get back from that. From just hanging out with the family. So anyways, just want to give you guys a heads up of what's coming up with the podcast. But now about this episode, I speak with Dr. Bryan Cooper, who's the founder of the Camano Island Health System. I mentioned the wrong name in the beginning of the podcast, and I feel really bad because I hate it when people do that, like get your name slightly off. So I just feel bad doing that. But anyways, I corrected it here, Camano Island Health System, which is a really it makes a lot of sense once he starts talking about it. What he's doing is combining a lot of practices when it comes to the health system, whether that's dentistry, chiropractic, nursing, nurse practitioner. He's taking a lot of different aspects, and he wants to continue to grow it and add more aspects to it. But he takes all of them, and instead of going like from your one doctor to the next doctor to the next doctor, the point of this is that all of those doctors are working under one system. So when you go to one person, they're like, you know what? I think Dr. So-and-so would do a much better job about this because this is more in his field. It has this collaborative and this like really nice feel about it that it really treats the whole person as a whole person, because obviously we are human beings that have a body that has so many different components to it. And the problem that I found is when you go to different doctors and stuff like that, like they'll send you to the next doctor, and they're like, oh, actually, you need to go see Dr. Susan. And they send you, to the other side of the town, and they're like, here, we'll send your records over. I don't know what it is about records, but like I never feel like the correct information, or at least all the information, gets sent over to the next person. So you feel like you're starting over and over. So all of that to say, I'm really excited about the Camano Island Health System and how it works. And the theory behind it. And Dr. Bryan Cooper was really interesting. He's got a fascinating background of living in all these different places growing up. Didn't really grow up in one specific area. And then we get into some medical stuff, and then like how he sees health and why he created the Camano Island Health System. And we also get into a little bit of his thoughts on COVID, its effect, all the different things about that. So anyways, without further ado, here's my conversation with Dr. Bryan Cooper. Hey, Islanders, it's Brandon with the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with the owner of Camano Island Health Center. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Bryan Cooper.
Thank you.
So before we get started, tell us a little bit about Bryan.
Well, I'm a doctorally prepared family practice nurse practitioner, currently working pain management over in Arlington. For full-time practice, and have been working on opening the Camano Island Health System for over a year and some months. Started last September, actually. Previously, I was the chief medical officer for all title and purposes for the Tulalip tribes, and I was with them for about 10 years. During that time, was able to put together a health system for them. They had bits and pieces everywhere and some fantastic services for the people, but it wasn't cohesive, and there wasn't a direct line of what does all this mean and how does it work together. And so saw the struggles of integrated medicine, which the U.S. and the world has actually been trying to put together for many years now, and that's integrating behavioral health with family practice. And we went a step further and included alternative medicines as well, and complementary medicines. So we're talking, physical therapy, chiropractic, massage, Reiki, Bowen, and specialties like, certainly pediatrics, podiatry, orthopedics, neurology, and then also dental. Dental was a big part of it too. And so I was over dental, and we all had a table where these specialists could sit together and talk, sharing ideas and frustrations, but also bringing cases to the table and saying, hey, I've got somebody who's really having a hard time here. What do you guys think? And you'd be surprised what comes out of that. It was difficult to get us to a working state of that, and then, but I've seen it happen. I've seen it work, and so I thought, gosh, this is what Camano needs.
Yeah.
A health system that is for and of the people, that is responding to our needs, and although we're Island County, we're not Woodby.
Yeah.
And we don't have the resources that they do.
Yeah.
We're not Stanwood. We are our own little community, which I happen to be extremely proud of.
Yep.
And I live down on the south end in this little cedar cabin, which I love. And I've got deer in the way every time I come home, and you got to wait for them to get out of your way. So anyway, this is the vision is to bring something like that to the community with best practice standards, giving providers enough time to actually listen to people. That's where you get your best care.
Right.
And so anyway, I guess you asked me about me, and I went right into the health system. I think this has always been part of me in my past. My father's foreign service, my mother's work with refugees and that sort of thing, and it just has kind of come all together, especially with the philosophy of nursing, and then with the advanced education in modern medicine. Yeah. So just kind of all came together. I think it is me.
Yeah.
The health system, though, is the island's. It's not mine. And that's why my name's not on it. Okay.
Very cool. So let's start at the beginning then. Where did you grow up then?
Oh, goodness. Nowhere and everywhere. So I was born in St. Paul, Minnesota. We moved to North Dakota. We were there for a while. And then Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, back to Iowa for a short stint, New Jersey, New York, Missouri, Kansas. And then I came here when I graduated college.
Okay.
So moved 18 times in 16 years, first 16 years of my life.
Wow.
My father was was in finance, credit unions, actually, and then got in with USAID and ACDI, and then that's where the Foreign Service happened. Created his own company, and it was he was developing a computer that would work with credit unions, because IBM had already had computers for banking, and centralized his company in the Midwest. And so that's how I ended up there for my high school years.
Okay.
So colleges I've gone to has been 6-year med program, UMKC, dropped out of that, went into the Navy. My father had a heart attack. My mother had died when I was 16. And it was too much to kind of handle. Yeah. And so I went off to the Navy to be a naval corpsman because I wanted that emergency medical knowledge now. I felt a sense of urgency and guilt, really. And so that's why I did that. Then I came back and went to the University of Kansas. biology, chemistry, double major, math minor, and got to the end of it and was looking at medical schools, and I just didn't like what I saw. It was more of a philosophy or a personality within the medical schools, and it was about the science, but it wasn't about the people, and so there was a disconnect for me.
Yeah.
So I said, no, I guess I don't want to do that, and I went back and more years of school, finished with theater production or film production and theater history, double major. And the production is more business-like.
Okay.
And then moved out here. I had some friends that were writers and actors, and I have family on Whidbey, and so came out here, and the first thing I do is I get a job being the office coordinator for a OBGYN clinic while I was producing theater, and so
Okay.
I lived a dual life for quite a while in
Yeah.
both healthcare and theater and film production.
Okay. Very cool. What theater group were you with?
Several. So Pioneer Square Ensemble in Seattle.
Okay.
That was fun. It's no longer there, of course. With AHA Theater, and that was a lot of fun as well. That was back during Northern Exposure and all those years. John
Okay.
Cullum coming in, and it was fun to hear him sing in the hallways. Great voice and super nice guy. And then Northwest Shakespeare's Ensemble, and so
Okay.
for them, I actually did costume design and some set design
Okay.
and some lighting. So
Nice.
Intiman did some design work there, and so kind of all over in the Seattle theater scene, I guess.
Yeah. Very cool. So you you moved all over the place then. Is your family back in Iowa still, or that area?
No, unfortunately my father just passed glioblastoma multiforme, so it's a brain cancer that is works pretty quickly. So getting the result on MRI, I kind of knew what it was, and that was that was kind of a interesting time, I guess. My stepmother's in Kansas, and in Gardner, Kansas. And she's doing well, and she's a spry, well, I'll just say older. She would hate if I ever told you how old she is. But she's doing really well. And I have a stepbrother there as well. Most of my I'm kind of survivor in my family, unfortunately. There's been a lot of tragedy in our lives. So I'm kind of the last one out there.
Yeah. So while you went to school and you kind of felt like it was very educational, scientific, and not so much the human aspect, upon starting working and stuff, so like at the OBGYN clinic, how was that for you? Like, did you feel like they were really getting the people side?
That's interesting you ask that, because I've never really thought about it. That experience, I was at Providence, and it was healthcare for women over in the Jeff Tower in Seattle. And at the time, that group of people, the dynamics was the best dysfunctional family I've ever been a part of. Really caring, smart surgeons, and the staff was dynamic, and again very smart and caring. But the personalities were so different that it was constant chaos, and I loved it. And some of those people I'm still connected with today.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided to go back to med school, was when I was there.
Okay.
And I went to the University of Washington to go back and update prereqs and whatnot. And but I just came to that same feeling that it was more it it's a different type of caring. I'll tell you, without making a super long story, when I found nursing, and that was just at a point in my life where I needed to get some initials behind my name because nobody really knew who I was, and I was getting old enough. I had tons of experience, but nobody really knew what I did because they're like, "Well, you're all over the place. What do you do? This guy's just what does he do?" And when you create a film, or a play, you're getting a bunch of talented people together. You're building a business. You're putting out a product, and then you're paying all your investors, and then you're bringing that back down, right?
Yeah.
And so that whole business process I was doing over and over again. So I was an entrepreneur. Well, that doesn't look good on a resume. Anyway, so I said I need to get some letters behind my name, at least for the day job.
Yep.
And when I got into nursing and then advanced practice nursing, it's really some of the nursing philosophies. And there's a lot of different care models out there, mostly written by nurses. MDs are starting to now. And the medical profession, as far as the AMA, the American Medical Association, I mean, they've started to buy in on the holistic, treating the whole person, not just the disease state. And so I see the AMA changing kind of what they're doing.
Yeah.
They just need to make it their own.
Yeah.
It has to be their idea, and that's fine. But anyway, at that time in the world, once I found that, and I was around advanced practice nurses and PhDs, that just really spoke to me, and that was kind of okay. Now I got it.
Yeah.
Now I got it.
Yeah. So then, that's kind of something that we've seen within doctors that we've worked with, whether it's for our kids, for ourselves. Obviously we're kind of seeing the old school, a lot of that when we're going to these doctors. And so, you get things from doctors that we've worked with in the past where they're like, it doesn't matter what you eat. Like, that has no effect on your body. It's all just based on this. And so whether it's a disease or sickness or whatever, they don't even look at the nutrition side.
Right.
And we've had friends who are going through medical things, and they have these very obvious health things that are based on their diet, and they're overall just staying healthy. And every time they bring it up to the doctor's like, that has no effect on it. Your thing is just, if we give you this medicine, it'll help taper that. And it's difficult. It's frustrating at times where you're like, no, the whole body has to work together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And absolutely it does. And I think, not to lambaste the AMA, I am frustrated when people say, "Oh, I have to see an MD," and I'm like, "Why?" So, they have more education. They have now actually. If you look at years of education, a nurse practitioner going through RN to then master's and then to a doctorate, there is more education there. Well, they have a residency, and that's true. They do. And that's something that I think nurse practitioners could really benefit from, because the way it is right now, we come out of school and you practice right away.
Okay.
So your first few years really in practice is residency.
Right.
And it all depends on if you get into a group that you can learn from and they're willing to teach and understand that you don't have in-practice experience.
Yeah.
So when you have an MD that comes out and they're out of residency, they're really somebody that's been out of school and practicing with mentorship for 3 or 4 years.
Wow. Yeah.
So nurse practitioners get that as well. Unfortunately, they just get it on the job, and it depends on if they were in a good group or not. So I think for nursing, if there's anybody listening out there that's an advocate for nursing, is that's something that I'm passionate about us changing, is to have that regulated somewhat for us.
Yeah.
However, fully autonomous, can diagnose, can prescribe, including controlled substances. The difference is nursing did not want to get into surgery, and it's very family practice based, and that's where we wanted to stay.
Yep.
There are other specialties within nursing that have come out of that, and that really has to do with the need out there.
Yeah.
We definitely need MDs. I think we definitely need nurse practitioners. And but this idea that one is better than the other is a little frustrating. That is very AMA, and there's people that will argue. But if you look at the studies that were done, I mean, at least 10 years ago at that time, there was about 40 different studies within the previous 10 years that had shown nurse practitioners being as safe or better or safer than MDs. And that had to do with lawsuits and meta-analysis on those.
Yep.
Then when you look at patient satisfaction, you actually saw that this patient satisfaction across the board was better with nurse practitioners. Again, that's not meaning that we're any better.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that we don't need each other.
Yeah.
It means that we're just coming across things differently.
Yeah.
Going back to the health system, and that's why I called it a system that's really lofty. Of this little guy who's funding this out of my own back pocket, right? But the reason I did that is because I wanted people to know this is not about one person. This is about many minds getting together.
Yeah.
It's about collaborative care, and it has to do with the senior center. It has to do with the grocery store. So we had a wonderful visit with Scott over at IGA just the other day with Katie, our nutritionist, and seeing how we could collaborate with them. Some of the they get fantastic produce there.
Yeah.
Some of that produce, a lot of people don't know what to do with, and so having Katie come in and maybe when they get a new product in, showing people how to use it, and or even meal planning and that sort of thing.
Right.
So the grocery store is part of your health.
Yeah.
Not just what you eat, but what's available to you, right? What is your lifestyle? Are you along, what do they call them? Where the truck drivers that actually go across the long haul truck driver.
Yeah.
You're in a food desert.
Yeah.
You've got maybe the roadside stop and then the gas station. So what is your nutrition like?
Right.
What is your body habitus like? So what is your environment like? Your environment is the truck.
Yep.
Are there ways that we can improve that for your health, your overall health? Working with people as individuals and getting all the great minds together. So Dr. Clavin is slated to join us. He's internal medicine.
Okay.
He's a DO, but then he went to internal medicine, and that was a kind of an MD residency that he went to. And so he's crossing barriers there. He's much more MD than he is DO. I got to say he's internal med, so it's all about the chemicals and many tests.
Yep.
Brilliant guy, and bringing him to, and he's also specially trained for adolescent care. So having an adolescent care program for our folks. He and I have worked together for many years, very collaboratively. So I know. I'm sorry. I kind of went off, and it's a long answer to your question.
No, that's good.
But I think we need all disciplines together.
Yeah.
We need to think holistically for our patients, taking from some indigenous philosophies, not just in the United States, but the idea of mind, body, spirit, emotion.
Yeah.
So it's your mind, your mindset, keeping it clear. There's meditations that can work for that as well. Being engaged, learning, trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
Those are all good mental exercises,
right? And
it's good for society.
Yeah.
And then the spirit, we talk about, are people spiritually fulfilled? Right. That's different than depression or anxiety or mindset. That is something that's a little bit more core. It's a little harder to get your hands around, but it's still very important.
Right.
And then, of course, your body. How is it functioning? What are we putting into it? And what are we doing to it daily? Yeah. Maybe just in our posture, for instance, or the kind of shoes we're wearing. and then emotion, which is again different than sort of mental health.
Right.
It's different than spirituality. Your emotional state is, at least in my mind, is more kind of minute by minute, and being aware of where you are with that.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that when you talk about all those things, it's really interesting. My wife is homeschooling our 4 kids.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, we were doing this before COVID hit, so.
Oh really? Okay, that's a job. Good for your wife.
Yes, she is amazing. And so, but she's been through the homeschooling. She's been, they're going through all these different cultures. Like they're going through the history, like ancient history through present. And as you go through these different cultures and different, all these different nations that they study, it's really fascinating what. It's one of those things where like there's no such thing as a perfect nation, and so every nation has these flaws and these issues. But you see, as if you study them all, you start seeing like certain countries and cultures are more comfortable with the spiritual, and they're more comfortable with the emotional, and they're more comfortable with certain things. Where if you just study America and where we are now, like the spiritual, a lot of that is very like. Yeah, everyone has their own little thing that they do, but it's just their own thing. It's not this cultural, like, it is part of who we are as a people. She's been doing a lot of studies on, like, indigenous and, like, the people, I mean, like, the Seattle Northwest area, but also just in general, like, she was reading, doing a book with the kids of, like, what was America like before everyone else came here? And again, just the way they respected the land, how they worked with the land, how it was basically a giant like garden. Like they interacted with the animals and all the things, and everything had to work together. And it was intertwined with their spiritualness and like different things. And so I think it's really interesting that I feel like in the world a lot of times, at least maybe not the world, maybe in America, we separate like spiritual is like one thing and like science is one thing and like math, like everything we have to put in its own box,
right, and
not really blend them all together.
Yeah, and I think that's very dangerous, and I think that's part of what we're experiencing today, in a very real way, is that division of culture. As opposed to, and that culture can be the guy next door. I mean, the difference between me and the guy next door. We don't have to go even into race or where you were from or anything like that. It's really become quite dysfunctional. Yes. So, if you look at Timbuktu, for instance, and going back, there was a university. I think that's. And I can be completely wrong, so people out there, please fact check this. But anyway, university, and I believe it was mainly Muslim that was set up, but it was for all religions. And it was a center of knowing and learning and sharing. And no one can be an expert in anything, and that's why when we look at our health, or our health system, again, that's the basis of it. Nobody is the expert. And we're humble in that fact. And we know that we need other people. We know we need those other minds. And we need different perspectives.
Right.
Because I may not see something, but somebody from a different vantage point will.
Yeah.
And if I really want to take care of you, I need to be open to that.
Right.
And then when we look at our everyday lives, the beauty of having friends and friendship and of being different and learning, a Christian learning from a Buddhist and a Buddhist learning from a Christian, and that's enriching, and that can actually even boost your own spirituality.
Right.
You can discover more things about your own religion.
Right.
And it should not be a threat.
Yeah. Well, and that actually kind of reminds me, it's very similar, I would say, to when you learn a new language. When I started learning Spanish, and I'm not fluent in it or anything, but like when you start learning another language, you actually understand your own language better because you're like, oh, wait, why do they do it this way? And once you realize why they do it that way, you look back at your own language like, oh, so when we say something, we're saying it from this perspective, and when they say it, it's
Right.
from this perspective.
Right.
It's the same thing. You're seeing these different aspects of religions or whatever. Like, it's how they've decided to focus on it.
Right, right. And I don't think that's a weakness, right? And I don't think that you can't be who you are.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at Scalia and RGB, and the friendship that they had, you know, on other sides of politics and on other sides of how you interpret the law, even.
Yeah.
And best friends.
Mm-hmm.
Because those discussions are exciting. Those discussions can be enriching.
Yeah.
And I think the important part is at the end of the day, can you share you know, a cocktail together, or
Yeah.
or if not share something else together.
Yeah.
Because we're all on this planet together, right?
Right. And I think if you've ever gone to groups and stuff like that, where like when you first go into a group, if you start talking to people and like, oh yeah, I do that too. Like, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to the whole group and you're like, man, we all agree on all this stuff. And you start talking. The first group is great because everyone's like, yeah, that was great. Like, few groups into it, you're like, okay, like, we're not really learning anything. Like, we're all just kind of saying the same thing in a circle.
Right. Exactly.
And it's not until you get new blood, new perspectives in it that you really start engaging your mind. And then as long as you can build that foundation of having that conversation, like, it can be, I mean, it's just so helpful. And that's why world travel, things which you can't do right now, but you know, travel, talking with other people from different backgrounds, interacting with different people that are not like yourselves makes such a big difference in how the world functions. And the world is such a better place when that happens.
Right, right. And this can be applied to many different things. You know, business definitely,
Right.
and that is when you bring in a new employee, or there's a new person that comes into the community, or there's just a new person that has been introduced to your circle of friends, right? So a friend of a friend, or somebody gets married or whatever, and then this person's there. Or somebody comes into your family. So if you can think of that organization that you have, whether it's your family, your business, or your friend network, again, if it's your church, is like a circle or a box, and then you have all these, and you can put in like happy faces. You have all these happy faces. That's great. And let's say they're all yellow happy faces. And then here's this new person. So this new person is new, right? So they're gonna be a blue face, and let's say they're a happy face too, right? So the question is, throughout time, does that blue face become a yellow face, or does that blue face stay a blue face? What do I mean by that? Well, if you look at let's say an organization that is not doing well, or a friend network that's not doing well.
Yeah.
And there's somebody new that comes in there, and you were drawn to that person because in your group everybody has this kind of flat face, right?
Yeah.
Straight line, 2 dots in a straight line. They're and that's where you are, and you're kind of stuck. And so you see somebody out there, and they're really dynamic, and they're happy and whatever. And so you bring them into your network because you're like, yeah, that's what we need. But then they're the outsider that have been brought in.
Right.
And then over time, to assimilate, to be part of your little group,
Right.
flatline face, right? And organizations do this all the time. You know, we're going to hire this. He's the best and the brightest, and he's really enthusiastic. And he comes in, and the guy says, hey, I've got this great idea. And they're like, oh, you know, okay, yeah, you're new here. We've tried that. We can't do that.
Right.
And so we got to look at something else.
Yeah.
You know, and really it's idea-based. Oh, that isn't how it's done here.
Right.
That isn't, you know, you're going to make Ethel mad if you say that in front of her,
Yeah.
right? Well, how about talk to Ethel
Yeah.
and find out why it makes her mad?
Yeah.
That might be interesting. And so anyway, I think we need to be careful of homogenizing.
Right.
It's safer maybe, but you're not going to get that grand experience. And you're not going to find, if you're looking for that happiness, and here's somebody who's really bubbly,
Right.
try to meet them where they are,
Right.
instead of bring them down to your group.
Yep.
You know, so
Yeah.
lifelong lessons of psychology.
Right. Well, and I think, like you said, that it works with business, but like I'm part of a mastermind group, and like our group is made up of people with that are in like emergency services and counseling, and like we're all over this place. And they do that on purpose when they put these groups together, so that you get all of these other perspectives.
Right.
And so, kind of bringing that back around, how has that all worked for you with the system?
In the past, it's I have to be very careful here because I don't want to talk out of school. So just be in general, and this is many different experiences that I've had. The people that are engaged with that want to have different color faces and all happy in your little circle. The people that are looking for that do very well.
Yeah.
You do have resistance because a couple things. One, people don't understand what another discipline or how another discipline works.
Right.
And so there's a learning curve. For me to understand what you're saying at the table, I have to get to know you a little bit first, right? And so there's a delay. If you're open to that, you can find out how they work, and you can see how you guys can complement each other.
Right.
If you don't do that, if you don't take that humanitarian leap of faith and work, it takes work.
Yeah.
Because you have to keep your mouth shut sometimes. That's a hard one for me. Then you can get there. If you don't, then that collaboration is just going to be co-location.
Yep.
We're in the same room. That's your office over there. They do that. This is my office, right?
Yep.
You got a foot problem, go see that guy.
Yep.
But when it does work, I've seen it work really well.
Yeah.
And the people involved in those collaborations really feel more fulfilled. The patients, and of course mine has all been patient based. Well, that's not true, because also in theater you do it all the time. You're bringing all these really eclectic artistic minds together, and believe me, it is herding cats. And it's the same thing with ARMPs and MDs. You are herding cats because they're brilliant and they're nutty. We're all type A, we're nuts.
Yep.
But bringing them together and then having that collaboration and the people that go to the shows, the patients that are responding to the care that they're getting, is palpable. It's palpable when they walk in the room. It's palpable when you're on stage and that audience is responding to this huge collaboration.
Yeah.
You can feel the difference.
Right. Yeah. That's very cool. Yeah. No, I love that aspect of it, because I mean that's one of the things. This kind of ties into a lot of things, but when you look at a person, like they've got this wheel, they've got those 4 aspects you were speaking of earlier, and I feel like and then if you look within the body and the physical side, like you've got dental, you've got vision, you've got health, you've got nutrition, you've got all these different aspects that all feed into it, and I always feel somewhat overwhelmed. Like, okay, right now I'm going to really focus on education. So I'm going to educate myself better, be better at organization, better at time management, better at my craft, whatever that is. And then all of a sudden I feel like my wife is like, well, you haven't really been spending time with family. Like you haven't been around as much. And so then it's like, oh, I need to lean into that. I'm going to push this direction. And I feel like you have a set amount of like energy. And as you start pushing in another direction, like then maybe work suffers, or maybe your friend circle suffers, and you just kind of get this like squishy, but like never quite where you want to be. Right.
But yeah, absolutely. And at the same time, though, isn't that wonderful? I mean, the opportunities that we have because we're breathing and standing and walking around, or just being a part of this. people say wonderful experiment. I haven't got the meaning of life, but being part of it is really amazing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's part of being alive. I think that's part of being engaged. But we do have to be careful, right? Because you don't want to. Family's very important, and so you don't want job to be more than family,
Right.
But to really focus on something, yeah. So there is a discussion with the wife and kids, and I think I'm going to go back to school. That's what I'd like to do, and here's why.
Yeah.
And you have a discussion. That means Dad's not going to be here as much. But it doesn't mean you love your kids any less.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that balance is hard for everyone, and but I think it's also wonderful that we live in a country that you can actually even articulate that. You look at some other situations, actually even in the United States, where there is whether it be poverty or other kinds of social or economic oppression.
Yeah.
In some places, it's war, where it's really survival, and
Right.
so they're Maslow. They're just at the very base of Maslow's hierarchy, which is food and shelter.
Yep.
And so I think your statement is great and wonderful.
Yeah. Okay, so then I kind of wanted to turn our attention a little bit to more current events and kind of before the podcast started, we were talking a little bit just about COVID and where we're at with everything. I just kind of want to get like every time I've had pharmacists and I've had doctors, and so I always ask them like, what are your thoughts right now? What are you feeling right now?
Well, boy, that's a loaded question, Brandon. So honest answer, I'm pretty numb, frustrated, disappointed, and tired. So I've been working, and this is no joke. I've been working 7 days a week since March, and that's a busy schedule plus trying to get this health system going.
Yeah.
During the time of COVID. So, and getting the health system going included, tenant improvements and,
Right.
Contract negotiations and all of that. Federal funding, federal loan at least. And right down to being the janitor. And
Right.
so I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
And if our country could be united and take steps that maybe people don't understand, but are willing to say, okay, I'm going to do this. Hardcore for a short amount of time at the beginning. Other countries did do it, and we didn't. And aside from the amount of deaths that we've had here, and yes, this is a real thing. This is not fake. This is a real thing that we're going through right now. The economic and the personal sacrifice that continues because of the resistance, that's frustrating to me. And that's the scientist.
Yeah.
The human part of me is I'm tired. I'm tired of hearing about it. I don't want to hear about it anymore. The fact that we're talking about, a health system for Camano Island and we have to talk about COVID, I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate this virus. It is something that we really haven't seen because of the delay factor, that incubation period where you're so contagious and you don't know it and other people don't know it. Right. I mean, that's a stealth weapon.
Yeah.
And, viruses are not living. They're not dead. They're kind of in between. They're basically like hypodermic needles that have a little bit of DNA in them that goes in and changes your cell to make more of these things that really aren't living or dead. So it's like a bomb that goes into a community and has the community makes more bombs to make more bombs.
Right.
That's really what a virus is.
Yeah.
And why is it even here? And so anyway, very, very frustrated. Although the United States and the world has gone through worse things, and I don't know about prevailed, but survived.
Yeah.
We just haven't had anything like this in a long time.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit of a reminder
Right.
that we're not in charge here.
Mm-hmm.
We're not in charge here. And nature doesn't care about your rights or what you think or what your political view is. Nature's going to do its own thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that was something I remember as a kid, because we learned about viruses versus just bacteria versus all these different things. And you learn about them. And I remember when I learned about viruses, I think I believe there was a video we showed of just like, this is kind of how it works. Like it jumps in, takes over one of your cells, overloads it until it explodes, and then releases more, and then it does the same. Those things do the same thing. I was like, how does our body ever get rid of these things? Because
Right.
like when you see the science, like it basically reprogram your cells against you.
Right.
And it's just crazy, like that our body going back to health and everything, that if given the right tools and everything, our body has a chance of fighting these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, but how do you fight something that does that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We are an incredibly complicated machine.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that the body works minute by minute is astounding to me. Because it's chemical, electrical, it is mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many systems running at the same time.
Yeah.
You think about your computer going down, you get a little blue screen. How does the body do it?
Yeah.
On a constant basis, especially when we abuse it. We're abusing it all the time, We're testing it. And especially when we're younger. I don't know how I'm alive today. I think it's an amazing thing. I mean, in a nutshell, to answer your question, is basically there's something that's foreign. The body says, hey, it doesn't look like something that I normally have. And so I'm going to mark that for disposal.
Mm-hmm.
And so it goes around with this little Post-it notes, and it says, this one's got to go, this has got to go, this has got to go, and this is what it looks like. Problem is, it takes a while for the body to recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like somebody's, you can't see real well, right? So you're like, who is that? Do I know that guy?
Yeah.
Maybe I met him at the Feynman Bar Mitzvah. And you, no. Oh, now I see. I don't know this guy at all. Right? Okay, he gets a Post-it note. And so there's a little delay there.
Right.
The question is, how long does it take for the body to do that versus how fast is that virus or that bacteria acting?
Right.
With bacteria, really bad, because bacteria are growing and growing and growing and growing and growing fast. And if they are producing toxins at the same time, a lot of that, our body isn't fast enough to respond to bacteria. That's why those are really, really dangerous when they get into your blood system or whatever, your lungs, that sort of thing. And so that's why we have antibiotics.
Yeah.
With viruses, we really don't. Well, recently we've come up with some great stuff, actually. Again, I say we. I'm not a part of this. Really great pharmacologists and brilliant minds out there. And good for them. But to fight viruses. But really, it's our body that is going to fight it. And so we got to keep it at bay long enough for our body to fight. With immunizations, what we're doing is we're kickstarting that recognition process. Mm-hmm. We're giving the body a little bit of glasses. Here's what this guy looks like. Okay, you don't know him. He's not going to hurt you right now because we tied his hands behind his back. And so, but you know who he is. Yeah, I do. Post-it note, right? And so you keep that around, and then next time you see this guy, no, I got to usher him out. So,
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I like to end every podcast with some rapid fire questions.
Oh, dear.
So the first one is, what purchase of $100 or less have you enjoyed the most over the last 3 months?
Okay, so that was the. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It was a 998 bottle of wine, and I think more than anything, I just needed a really nice glass of wine.
Yeah.
And I had bought it randomly because it was on sale, and was really surprised. And
Nice.
and I kept the bottle at home so I can try to find it again.
Very cool.
But yeah, that's definitely under $100.
Yep.
And but yeah, it was really a well done vintage. So
Very cool. All right. Pretend you have a friend coming from out of town. What would their first day look like here? Maybe outside of COVID.
Boy. Yeah, outside of COVID. Their first day would be just kind of being, coming in and drinking it all in. Again, I'm on the south side of Camano.
Yep.
And so we're away from a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the cabins, on the bluff there, if you will. Yeah, it's lazy.
Yeah.
And I can say this just from the last visitor I had. And so it was coming in, relaxing, going out on the deck. We've got eagles that are right nearby.
Nice.
And they're like, and they're just drinking it in, and you can just see the stress and tension leave. So
Yeah.
they were from Chicago.
Wow.
And and then the next day is just the leisurely breakfast, and gosh, what do you want to do? I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot to explore on the island. So,
Yeah.
who is an interesting or fascinating person that I should interview next?
Kathy Bateman, Dr. Bateman. So she's long-term island resident. She's a chiropractor, and she's
Okay.
actually just below where we are,
Okay.
over at the Port Susan Professional Building, which is the old Windermere building.
Yep.
Kathy's great. She is very dynamic. There's many layers to Kathy, and I think one of the things that I really like about her, again, is she really cares.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime I see that in people, I look for a couple things. One is, can I see your heart, right? Are you
Yeah.
going forward with a caring heart? And the second is integrity.
Yeah.
If you make mistakes, that's fine. If you have differing opinions, that's fine. But integrity is a huge part of what I look for in the people that I like to be around, and certainly Kathy's full of that.
Yeah.
She is integrity. She is a caring heart, and she's funny. So yeah,
Sounds good.
she'd be a great interview.
All right. And lastly, if you could have a message on a billboard on Camano Island, right as you're driving on the island, what would that say?
Well, besides welcome, boys, you come on the island. I would say just enjoy life with us. And then if you're not from here, then leave.
Yes.
Come and visit, have a great time, and then go.
Yes. The amount of times I have gotten that on the podcast.
Oh, really?
Enjoy it, but,
It's there's a time. There's a time.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's really neat being able to share the island with people, and
It is.
when they see it and they get to experience all the different aspects of it.
Mhm.
It's really neat. Like you said, you see that just like light bulb come on, and they're just like, "Oh, I can breathe in here." Like just
Yeah.
take a breath.
Absolutely.
I think we all need that right now.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. That's for sure. If I could ask for something of the people listening,
Yeah.
is so when I started this idea and vision, like I say, I've done it before, and I was like, we got to do it for our own community. I wanted to have a town meeting because I wanted to hear what people were lacking in their healthcare. What does healthcare mean to you? How do you know how do you know when you are being cared for?
Mm-hmm.
What is care to you, right? So, pretty introspective questions. But I wanted to ask that of people at a open forum, like a town meeting, so that we can kind of build that momentum and because one person shares and another, and then more people open up and whatnot. Because I really want to know, we want to cater this health system to our needs.
Yep.
And I'm not hearing from everybody.
Right.
I know there are some people that like being alone. They like being on their property, and they feel safe, and that's it. But I do want to reach out to them too, because I want to respect what they're doing, and also be there for them if they need me.
Right.
Or our health system, or provide them preventative care so that they can live that life without being sick or being in pain, or whatever the case may be. So with that, if people are listening, if you want to give us feedback, tell us what you want, what you're looking for. What does it mean for you to be cared for? What does that look like? How do you know that somebody's on the right track treating you? Is just to send that to it's info at CamanoIslandHealth.com.
Okay.
And so just send it to our email. Let me know what you're thinking and what your needs are. And I can't say that we can meet them, but we'll try our damnedest.
Yeah. And we'll have that email linked in the show notes. So if you guys are driving or something, you guys can check it out in the show notes later.
Okay.
Awesome.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Well, thank you, Brandon. This is a pleasure, and I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thank you. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Dr. Bryan Cooper for joining me on the podcast, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us be found by other Islanders like yourself. And for more information on this episode, you can go to CamanoCommons.com/EP77. That's CamanoCommons.com/EP77. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.